When we first planned what to grow, we decided to concentrate on oats. In fact, in the early days, we were the Oat Project. The decision to focus on oats came from information that we had gathered from the farmers that we had interviewed when carrying out background research for the project. They informed us that oats grow well in the damp conditions of the southwest and that they were a resilient crop. We deduced that oats were a logical crop for us to start with. This turned out to be our first mistake. What farmers didn't know was just how difficult oats are to process, but that is a story we tell in Chapter 6, Processing the Crops. In our first growing year, 2015, before we had secured funding, we had an informal arrangement with a local biodynamic farmer who had been growing black oats for years to feed to his animals. He had re-sown with saved seed each year. We didn't know how these oats would compare to conventional porridge oats, but we were interested to try them, as we felt that the seed would have adapted well to local conditions, and the oats were being grown regardless. If we discovered that the oats didn't taste nice, they would be used by the farmer for animal feed, so we had nothing to lose. This was a great way for us to get to know the processes involved without having any of our own costs. In 2016, we brought another farmer on board. He had previous experience of growing trial plots of a variety of grains and pulses. He got in contact after purchasing an old, relatively small Laverda combine harvester, having realised that from the farming point of view, the weakest link was not having control of when harvest takes place, and then being at the mercy of contractors. This smaller, old combine was well suited to Devon's smaller fields and narrow field entrances. It also had a lot more flexibility than modern combines, as it was designed to work with a wider variety of crops, and had a selection of different size sieves for the initial cleaning of the crop. That year we got carried away and a little too ambitious. In the autumn the farmer planted maslin, winter wheat, Skyfall and Nelson, 2 types of spelt, Zollen spelts, and a spelt mix of about half a dozen lines. In the spring, Camille naked oats, einkorn and peas were planted. We encountered many hurdles with the post-harvest care of these crops, see 5.2 case study, and our lack of sufficient suitable storage coupled with being unable to dehull crops, see Chapter 6, Processing the Crops, led to the decision to scale right back in the following 2 years. We opted to work with 2 farmers that were both in Dartington, less than 3.5 miles from Totnes, and they just grew wheat for us. Growing wheat local to a mill isn't such a revolutionary concept, and in some ways it felt that it was a big compromise. Wheat is very much seen as a commodity crop, and has increasingly been under scrutiny around gluten-intolerant related health issues that many people experience. There certainly seems to be a higher than average percentage of the population in Totnes with a gluten intolerance. From this point of view, growing wheat may not have been the obvious choice, but, as we discovered, most flour and bread bought in the UK is sourced from wheat grown beyond the borders of Europe. Instead, hard varieties of wheat with high gluten are imported from Russia, China, India and the US. The rising interest in slow, sourdough fermented breads is creating a resurgence in British flours. With their characteristic lower levels of gluten, we were keen to demonstrate what could be achieved. Our 2 farmers each grew a different population of wheat. A modern population of wheat, known as YQ, bred at Wakeland's Organic Research Centre, and a heritage population bred by John Letts that we officially grew on his behalf. For information on the legalities of growing populations, see Checklist 2, Contractual Considerations when Growing Unregistered Seed, and Population Crops versus Single Varieties. Having the 2 populations growing within less than a mile of each allowed direct comparison between them. During the summer of 2017, like most of the country, Devon experienced a drought. We found that the modern YQ wheat, with its corresponding short straw and shallow roots, struggled, and the grains looked withered. whereas the heritage population wheat that stood over 1.5 metres tall in some places seemed to thrive in the hot, dry conditions. The deeper roots ensured that the crop received sufficient water to swell the grains.